Last year, Square Enix released the DioField Chronicle, a real-time strategy RPG that I personally fell in love with. I ended up getting the Platinum Trophy and even placed it in my top 10 JRPGs of the year. Now, 6 months later, they've released a free update with all kinds of new content. So in this video, I'll be telling you all about what's included and if it's worth taking time out of this very busy season in gaming to give it a go. So first, let's start with what's included in this free update. So there are 5 new story missions mainly focusing on Waltaquin, including 2 side missions that are totally optional. There's also a new weapon type, the Tome, which only Waltaquin can use, as well as a new game plus mode and a very hard difficulty. Now it took me about 2 to 3 hours to finish, so that's about how long you can expect to get out of this. Now while there is new content and it's totally free, so it's no harm to anybody, is it worth taking time out of your week to play through this? Well, let me share my opinion with you. Now let me say this, I love Waltaquin. She was my favorite character in any game that came out last year. So I was really excited to get more story content about her, and I was really hoping that she'd go completely unhinged and, really lean into what made her an interesting character. I've said this in other videos, but to me, I always say that she reminds me of the Joker. She just revels in causing mischief and creating chaos. Now, as far as this free update goes, there are some moments that she does revel in creating mischief among the Blue Foxes and with other characters, but to me, this felt mild compared to the end of her story arc in the main game. For me, I just wanted more of what made her interesting. Now, this sort of takes place halfway through the game as far as I can piece together, so she doesn't go completely full unhinged like she does in the main game, which is a little bit disappointing. Like I said, I was hoping to get more of that out of her and they would just really lean into it, but to me, it just didn't go far enough and it wasn't as interesting as I was hoping it would be. Now, as far as the actual gameplay content itself, to me, it feels a little too late. It's almost 6 months to the day after launch, and while I appreciate the free content, like I said, there's no harm in, going through some free content, it just feels late, and I don't know if anybody even remembers or cares at this point. And the hardest thing for me with this update is I totally forgot how to play this game. It's a pretty unique combat style, and so it takes a lot of time to get used to it and learn the ropes, and if you haven't played it in 6 months, you're just gonna get your butt kicked right away. For me, I had to retry the first mission about 3 times just to kind of get reminded of how the controls work, how the different, abilities work. So there's definitely a learning curve if you haven't played it since launch like me. The other thing that's kind of a bummer is Waltaquin is severely underleveled compared to the rest of your team. Because of what happens in the main story, she leaves the party, and so you're just way out leveling her in the main game. And so for them to come back and have this be focused around her, it's a little bit disappointing with where the levels are at, just because she's probably 15 to 20 levels underleveled. Now, you don't have to use her at all if you don't want to, but you do get a new weapon that only she can use, so it seems weird that you wouldn't want to use her. Now, as far as the levels themselves and the bosses and the enemies, it's kind of more of the same. You'll be going through capturing bases to lower down bridges, to fight bigger enemies and, fend off towers and break through barricades and things like that. Now, there are new enemies, big monsters, and enemies that are just really challenging. To me, I feel like I just kind of like face rolled and blasted through the main game with really no difficulty. I thought it was pretty easy. Here, though, this is pretty challenging. And again, I'm not quite sure if it's that balance between trying to relearn the game or if these new missions really are challenging, but I found them pretty difficult, especially the last few story missions. That all said, I actually really appreciated that I had to think a little bit more and really strategize like which summons I brought into battle, which potions I brought into battle. I really had to adjust my equipment and strategies too, which I appreciated, so it made it more interesting even though I had to retry some of the later missions a few times. Now let's talk about Waltaquin's new weapon, the Tome, because this changes everything about the game. Now, there are 2 unique abilities that are unique to this Tome. One is Necromancy, where you can summon a skeleton to fight on its own. And so basically whatever enemy Waltaquin is fighting, it will also fight that. So you can't control the skeleton directly like you would with your other characters. It kind of just fights whatever Waltaquin is. Now, it does have its own HP meter and stuff like that, but if you want to explode it and blow it up and do big damage, you can do that as another ability. This is really interesting because it essentially creates a 5th party member for the first time in the game, which I think maybe makes up for why the game is so difficult in this update, because if you have an extra character to help fight with you, then hey, it makes it a little bit more easy. And next, and probably my favorite of the Tome abilities, is the Skeletal Dragon that you can summon. Well, you're not really summoning it, you almost transform into it. And this skeleton has a completely different moveset. If you've ever run into them in the main game, you can create that little ring of smog around your character that limits movesets. You can do a big laser fire breath, and you can also do a big stomp that stuns stuns all the enemies around you. To me, it almost feels like you can have two tanks with this character because, you always want to have that one tank to take all the damage while you have all your DPS characters doing the damage. And there's a lot of moments in the story where you have to split up your team because there's two rows of enemies coming from different parts of the map and you have to defend different barricades. So it's like, okay, I'm going to put my tank over here and then maybe the Skeletal Dragon over here, and you kind of just try to whittle it down one at a time until you can finally beat them all. And like I said earlier, I really enjoyed these new challenging maps and having to use these new tome abilities to get through and just kind of retrain my mind how this battle system works with these new abilities. You can't just mindlessly plow through these. You'll have to either grind or really get strategic with how you use your abilities, which I enjoyed. So all this said, should you actually take 2 to 3 hours out of your week to play through this? I mean, I guess so. I mean, here's the thing about this update. It's not terrible. Like, it's not something I can just totally trash, but it's not like amazing either. It's basically like a brand new chapter in the story. It kind of does most of the same things. I feel like this is best for people that are going through the game right now or are maybe thinking about playing the game for the first time, but maybe not great for people like me that haven't played the game since launch. You'll have to relearn how to play the game, and it might be kind of tricky, but if you really enjoyed it and you want to give it a try, then hey, I mean, it's free and it's extra content, so hey, it can't hurt. And I feel like it's especially hard to ask players to pull themselves away from what's going on in gaming right now because there's a ton of great games like Octopath Traveler 2, Wild Hearts, and even Trails to Azure next week, or maybe it's out right now depending on when you're watching this video. So I guess it's up to you. If you got some extra time and don't have a ton of extra money, then hey, it's an extra couple hours of cool gameplay, and you can even probably extend this into the full game because you can take Waltaquin to the rest of the missions, which is really cool. I guess to sum it all up, it's not going to blow your face off, but it's not bad either. It's just kind of right in the middle. Now, if you want to hear my full thoughts on the main game, check out this video right here. And special thanks to Reset Switch, Tyler Kuzawa, and the Miyazaki Man for supporting me over on Patreon. To get exclusive videos and other cool perks, consider supporting me over on patreon.com/thegaming shelf. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.